One of the things, and I wanted to answer your question about what keeps me driven, what keeps me driven in terms of, my activity for the past 30 years. Whether it's the Global African Business Association or NAPAC USA, that's the Nigerian American Public Affairs Committee, where I serve as National Political Director. I do things in Phi Theta Kappa International Honor Society. I do things, educationally, and people, yourself, as well as many ask me, what keeps me going. What keeps me going is spiritual energy. I understand the task at hand, and it's a large task at hand that we have to begin to build systems. I think oftentimes Black people, domestically and internationally, want to do the right thing. They just sometimes don't know how to do the right things. And I think, one of the key things I've learned over a period, I've, gone through all these different schools of thought and all this type level of scholarship. One of the key things that we don't have is a system. And that's what drives me every day, building a system. It's important that we build a system of sustainability. And I think that's what we lack in our communities, is a system. I mean, oftentimes we talk about Black businesses and support Black businesses, support Black banks, support this, support that. But how are we able to support these things if we're working in silos all the time and working with a spirit of mistrust? I think often you have churches on every corner that can stop crime, that can transform communities overnight. And instead, you want a tax break, and you're busy taking people to heaven, but you're not busy taking people to a credit union or CDFIs, which is a community development financial institution, or even starting a topic that we have been talking about in GABA, venture capitalists or private equity firms that lead to venture capitalism to create an economic impact within our community. We have to learn to think out the box and throw away the box and start building systems. And I think, for years I have been discussing this, and I'm dedicated to building a real system for our people in the 21st century. We're living in the fourth industrial revolution, and one of the key things, we have to stop looking at things traditionally. And I think that's been a killer point for us, is looking at things traditionally. I think we need to pay close attention to the disruption that's going on within our global community as people of color. I was taking a tour myself and the co-founder of GABA. We were just taking a tour of a couple of African markets. We've been doing this for quite some time. In fact, one of the reasons why GABA started originally 8 years ago was because we wanted to strengthen and support our African markets. And here we are 8 years later, back at square one, really ready to roll this thing out. And what I found out is the lack of a system with our African markets. You have here in Michigan a store called K&F that's owned by Arabs, selling African and Caribbean food to African and Caribbean people. And looking at these other African markets, and I asked them specific questions like, where are you getting your products from? They're getting it from Maryland, they're getting it from Chicago, they're getting it from Cincinnati. And I did research on these distributors. They owned by Hispanic and Asian and Arab people. And so we don't even control the supply chain in our food markets, and you have inflation. So what happens if the products become cost prohibitive? These African markets have to shut down. And so that's because we lack a system. And so we need to be in the business of building systems. I think we build too many individual projects for us to make money on the side, but we're not building wealth with a system. And I think, we need to get out of that mindset of We have to get out of that mindset of individual money and making a few coins here and there, as opposed to building a systemic measure of impact and empowerment that we can link to the continent of Africa, that we can link to the Caribbean, that we can link to Brazil, which is the second largest group of black people in the world. 100 million black people live in Brazil, right here in the Western Hemisphere. And so we need to understand that we are in a cycle of disruption. We need to take a look at how we run our schools differently. Educational technology is going to play a huge role in revamping the way we educate our children this decade. Why are we still having traditional discussions on funding at a local and state levels of government when it comes to our taxes, our property taxes and things like that, or appropriation dollars at the state level for education? Why are we still having those conversations when educational technology is going to disrupt all of that? That means we need to start looking at changing the funding for these things. These educators and these educators are not discussing that. These politicians are not discussing that. We need to take a look at libraries. I sit on a library board in the city of Inkster, Michigan, and we're looking at changing the way we do library business because it's hard to keep a library director. There's disruption going on in the library. There's disruption going on in City Hall, with blockchain technology and fintech. And so we need to start understanding and looking at things differently, and start preparing 10, 15 years out what our local urban communities should look like, what Nigeria should look like 10, 15 years down the road, what Rwanda or Kenya or Botswana should look like 10 or 15 years down the road, or Jamaica or Haiti or Panama. We need to start having these real serious dialogues and strategy sessions of how to build a system within the confines of the 21st century so that our children will be better off because of the decisions that we make today.